My name is Harold Clarence Howard. I'm representing Canada and Niagara Falls in the Ultimate Fighting Challenge. We have a saying back home that if you're coming on, come on.
I can assure you that up here in Canada, we in fact do not have a saying that goes like that. But looking at that luscious blonde mane and those Terminator-style sunglasses, I'd believe anything that Harold Clarence Howard told me. The man was not a liar either. He really did come on. Known for his aggression and borderline completely reckless style, Howard actually had some legit credentials when he made his official MMA debut in 1994 at UFC 3. Howard was a former 3-time Canadian heavyweight karate champion and a member of the Canadian national karate team in 1986 and 1987. As far as karate goes, he was a legit badass. During the mid to late 80s, he was the top-ranked karate fighter in Canada and also dabbled in traditional sport Jiu-Jitsu in his free time. In 1984, he won gold at heavyweight as part of Team Canada at the World Jiu-Jitsu Championship, all while maintaining a reputation as the top striker in the country. Howard eventually suffered a career-ending back injury which officially halted him from competition from 1988 until 1992 when he came out of retirement and won silver at the National Black Belt League World Championships in Sport Karate. The only reason he ended up with a second place finish at the tournament was after going 2-0 earlier in the day, his back injury flared up again, forcing him to pull out of the finals. This likely would have been the end for most competitors in those days, but with the newly created Ultimate Fighting Championship opening its doors in 1993, it gave Howard one last chance to prove his talents on a grand stage. After watching the first two events, he got in on the action at UFC 3, the American Dream, being the only competitor in the tournament outside of Royce Gracie to be representing a country outside of the United States. In the opening round, he drew Roland Payne, a Muay Thai stylist who boasted a perfect 27-0 record in bare-knuckle boxing matches, with 24 of those wins coming by knockout.
My name's Roland, and I plan on introducing my opponents to some good old local Carolina pain.
Sure, he wasn't the most charismatic, but who wants to be introduced to some good old-fashioned South Carolina pain? Probably not most people. Besides, Roland wasn't a talker, he was a fighter, and a bare-knuckle one at that. But despite having a 27-0 record, he wanted absolutely nothing to do with the striking of Harold Howard and opted to just rush in and do whatever possible to get this fight to the ground. But Howard was actually considered quite well-rounded for the time. He easily stuffed out all of Payne's desperate attempts before absolutely just filling him with his lunchbox-sized hands until Rolly literally rolled over. This set up the big man with the big fight as he drew 2-time defending tournament champion Royce Gracie in the semifinals. Royce Gracie in 1993 was simply put, the man. He entered the night as the UFC 1 and UFC 2 tournament champion and had a perfect 7-0 record in the new sport of no holds barred. If there were betting odds back then, he would have been easily a 10-1 favorite to repeat and win the UFC 3 tournament.
We should point out that Mr. Gracie is a master of jiu-jitsu on the ground. So, me being a jiu-jitsu person, I can appreciate that more than the other competitors because I am a grappler also. But I have, in the last few years, been creating a system of fighting that brings the karate aspect back into jiu-jitsu, which means that I'm working so that the person does not have to get to grapple you. So I'm looking forward to meeting Mr. Gracie on the mat, but I'm also looking forward to allowing myself to let my karate aspect of it take over too. So we'll see. And the best man will win, and that's all there is to it.
Howard walked right through his first round opponent in Roland Payne. Royce Gracie, meanwhile, was not as lucky, drawing legitimate heavyweight Kimo Leopoldo, who not only walked to the cage dragging a giant 40-pound cross, but also proceeded to put a fear of God scare into Royce, who needed to resort to hair-pulling tactics and use just about every ounce of energy he had to defeat the big Hawaiian bruiser. Heading into the quarterfinals, Gracie was the more skilled fighter, but Howard was the bigger and fresher man. He still made the walk to the cage, Gracie train and all. But when the fight started and the prospect of facing Canada's greatest action hero finally set in, the Brazilians threw in the towel and conceded defeat. A lot of people wouldn't want to win like this. Not Harold Howard though. He stormed around the cage and accepted that first round TKO win like he had earned it with his own two hands. The tournament favorite was now officially out, and he would get an automatic bye to the finals. He would still have to face Ken Shamrock in the finals, but then, as fortune would have it, Shamrock also bailed out of the tournament, citing an injury sustained in the previous fight. This meant that Harold Howard would now be facing tournament alternate Steve Jenham, a police officer from Nebraska who was a black belt in ninjutsu. Jenham was not only the only ninja in the UFC, but he was also considered a very small heavyweight, coming in at 5'10", 215 pounds. It was also his professional MMA debut, and he was in the finals of a UFC one-night tournament just like that. This was Harold's time to shine, but after attempting the greatest scissor flip kick in the history of combat sports, it was all downhill as he was quickly tired out and succumbed to a TKO stoppage to the much smaller man just a minute 27 into the first round.
Keeping a close eye on him. Unbelievable. Alternate wins the Ultimate Fighting Championship. An alternate win. Steve Jenham has won $60,000. He is the Ultimate Fighting Champion.
They brought him back a year later in 1995 for the UFC 7 heavyweight tournament, but he was bounced in the quarterfinals after getting stopped early in the first round by Mark Hall, and just like that, he was out of the UFC. He would resurface one last time in 1996, traveling to Japan and lasting 29 seconds in a fight with BJJ specialist Hugo Duarte at Universal Valley 203. As he would later explain, he accepted the fight with Duarte thinking he'd get a free trip out of Japan and really didn't think he'd ever lose to anyone named Hugo. At age 38 and with an official MMA record of 1-3, Harold Howard quietly retired from the world of fighting. He returned home to Niagara Falls, Canada and opened up a karate school, teaching as many as 40 students while raising 3 children and also worked part-time as a roofer in the area. For over 10 years, he remained a cult figure on MMA forums and message boards due to that UFC 3 appearance. But it wasn't until 2009 that fight fans finally got an update from Howard, when he did an interview with popular MMA website SureDog.com in early February. Things sounded like they were going well, besides a few mentions of hardships such as losing his job, almost losing his house, and even getting hit by a car while standing in the line at the CNE fair. He spoke about his wife and family, how he felt about the sport's evolution, and what he believed his legacy was. All sounded good, and it was a happy where are they now type interview. But in late 2009, fans heard a not so happy update regarding Harold Howard. On December 22nd, just 3 days before Christmas, Howard was arrested and charged with 2 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of assault with a weapon, attempted breaking and entry, evading police, and a slew of other charges. As the story goes, Harold Howard started to lose his grip on things around October 2009, roughly 7 months after that seemingly happy SureDog interview. At first, he would just act differently than normal, accusing his wife of wearing too much makeup to impress other men and having affairs outside of the marriage. Things eventually escalated and got physical. She officially filed for separation from him a short time later. On December 9th, 2009, Howard showed up at the Toronto Star offices in Toronto with a briefcase. He looked like a businessman at first, but his clothes were worn and his knuckles were bruised and covered in dry blood. He claimed there was a plot to ruin his life. He claimed that he'd been injected with a liquid that hardened his veins and immobilized him. As he was escorted out of the building, he stated to one of the security guards, "On to Plan B," before being removed from the property. He developed a delusional belief that his sister and her son were poisoning him by putting toxins in his drink and stealing his pain medication. He also believed his estranged wife Elise was involved in a prostitution ring based in the casino where she worked, and that she was providing their son to a pedophile ring that operated through the hockey team the boy played on. Acting on these beliefs, in the morning hours of Tuesday, December 22nd, neighbors were awoken to the sound of screaming as Harold Howard attacked his sister and nephew with a claw hammer, injuring them both before escaping in his truck after his nephew was able to fight him off. He then went to his ex-wife's house and attempted to break in sometime around 1 in the morning before again taking off and deciding to head to her work, the Fallsview Casino in Niagara Falls, Ontario. With no clear plan in place, he just crashed his pickup truck right through the front doors of the casino around 2 in the morning, knocking himself out on impact and getting arrested by police a short time later without incident. Built in 2004, the Fallsview Casino in Niagara Falls is the largest casino in all of Canada, employing over 4,200 employees between its hotel, casino, and 4 restaurants. Management was shocked that no one was hurt in the incident, but credited the fact that Harold did it on a Tuesday at 2 in the morning, and if it had even been just a few hours earlier, there surely would have been a crowd of people standing by those front doors. He would later tell police he did not remember anything from the entire day, but his sister and nephew would blame his actions on a crippling painkiller addiction that dated back to the early 80s and only got worse after his back injury in 1988. With that in mind, Harold Howard never fought in the UFC until 1993, 5 years later, meaning he was already a full-blown addict by that time. In court, he decided to represent himself and was sentenced to 52 months in prison from the presiding judge. His ex-wife and mother of his kids, Elise Manis, claimed she felt the sentence was too light and that it should have been longer considering his reckless actions. Once in prison though, things really didn't get any better. As an undiagnosed schizophrenic, Harold Howard's mental health continued to rapidly decline, leading to multiple incidences while incarcerated. According to court records, he believed that the drug Seroquel that the prison psychiatrist had imposed on him was causing him to lose consciousness, enabling the other inmates to rape him. He claimed to have a bleeding anus and abdomen pain as a result. He also claimed that this was all part of a big conspiracy theory against him planned by Dr. Scott and the security staff at the jail. After the alleged rape, Harold was kept in solitary confinement for the rest of his time at the prison before being transferred to the Regional Treatment Center in Kingston Penitentiary on February 9, 2011. Once there, he was given a court order to take antipsychosis medication, and once he took them, he made a full recovery shortly thereafter. In 2013, Harold Howard was officially released from jail, being let out on parole after serving his full sentence, just under 4.5 years in total. He moved back home to Niagara Falls and began teaching karate classes again, even doing a run of seminars in the area, but overall has largely kept under the radar in recent years. Still, he will always remain an important footnote in the history of MMA and has a legacy that refuses to be forgotten by the internet.
And you carried it all the way through the end of the fight. Well, I told you if it worked, it worked. And it didn't, I didn't. So in the end, it didn't. I love you, children. I love your wife, and I, believe it or not, I love my family too. It's unbelievable. Just a true champion. It's just super. It's a great fight. It's a really good fight.
Ben Perry talks to Harold Howard.